Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons' greatest accomplishment so far, in my humble opinion. So what has Dungeons and Dragons done? Dungeons and Dragons is an incredibly Dungeons and Dragons, in my humble opinion, is a catalyst. It struck in 1974, and with incredible force, it changed the politics, the culture, and the religion of America. And that catalyst, that transformation of American politics, American religion, and American culture continues now. And there are things that happen on Dungeons and Dragons, conversations that happen on Dungeons and Dragons that do not happen on any other product in the world. And I think it has Dungeons and Dragons has an orbit, and it gathers people who are simultaneously charismatic, confident, and intelligent. The most charismatic, confident, and intelligent Americans are drawn like moths to a flame to Dungeons and Dragons. And because of that momentum, incredible things happen on Dungeons and Dragons. But what is the most amazing accomplishment of Dungeons and Dragons? Well, I'm going to share it with you right now. So, in 1973, before Dungeons and Dragons existed, every human on the planet had individuated sentience. They had one sentience. They had one collection of memory. They had one collection, and it contained memory, knowing, prescience, emotion, okay, motivation, intention, okay. So each human had one sentience. Within them, they had one set of memories, one knowing what was happening in the very moment. They had prescience. If they watched a rock thrown into a lake, they knew it would make a splash when it hit. Prescience, knowing what's coming next. Motivation, desires, intentions, emotions. One set, right? With Dungeons and Dragons, I don't think this happened immediately. In 1974, the infrastructure was built for manifold sentience. What is manifold sentience? The ability for a human being to have many kinds of sentience within themselves. Manifold sentience. I think the infrastructure was built in 1974 by Dungeons and Dragons for human beings to have manifold sentience. Okay? I don't think manifold sentience was achieved until 1980. But at that point, basically, because Dungeons and Dragons has unbound identity and allows one person to be 100 people, right? An elf, a dwarf, a thri-kreen, a warforged. Basically, explorations into identity started to occur with Dungeons and Dragons as early as 1974. By 1980, I think it was fully possible to be a human being with manifold sentience. That is the greatest accomplishment of Dungeons and Dragons. So let's say there's a person and they have, and they're a normal human being, right? They have individuated sentience. Then they begin playing Dungeons and Dragons. They have an incredibly engaged, skilled dungeon master, and they play a turtle wizard, right? They will have a second sentience if they're engaged and they're paying attention. When they're done with that campaign, they will have their own sentience, but they will have another sentience. They will have a collection of memories, knowing, prescience, motivation, intention, emotion, desires that are completely alien to their own sentience. They have manifold sentience. They have many, and they can add to it. So it is quite possible right now for one person to have manifold sentience, to have 30, 50, even 70 separate collections of sentience. Manifold sentience. Dungeons and Dragons' greatest accomplishment is freeing humanity from individuated sentience and moving us to manifold sentience. It is my opinion today there are 10 to 20 people on this planet, human beings, who have manifold sentience imbued in them by participation in Dungeons and Dragons. That's my humble opinion. What is your humble opinion? I'd love to hear it. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.